Harry Reyes blasted the Voxari soldier's head open, green blood and brain matter splattering his face. Around him, human soldiers roared in triumph as the Voxari lines shattered under a hail of human plasma fire. Reyes's new cannon tore ships from the sky and eviscerated alien bodies. The stench of burned flesh and metal hung heavy after the battle. Reyes wiped gore from his visor, spine tingling with the adrenaline high of victory. His cannon's power had turned the Voxari offensive into a one-sided slaughter. Earth Command hailed him a hero. But not everyone celebrated Reyes's triumph. The Galactic Council, horrified by the carnage inflicted by human weaponry, saw a threat to their fragile peace. In a tense emergency session, they voted to ban all human weapons from the Galactic Theater, and to make an example of Reyes. The decorated war hero found himself stripped of rank and exiled in disgrace to the remote world of Zathura. But his story was far from over. On Zathura, a mysterious Voxari female approached Reyes with an incredible claim that the weapons ban was part of a conspiracy by the Voxari leaders to neutralize the only threat to their galactic dominance, human ingenuity and firepower. Now, Reyes must decide whether to trust his former enemy and fight to uncover the truth. The future of humanity's place among the stars hangs in the balance as he plans a daring mission into the heart of the Voxari Empire to expose their deception. The battle for the galaxy's fate and humanity's has only just begun. Reyes' boots thudded against the grated metal floor of the smuggler's ship as he followed Varys and Jace Hawkins to the bridge. The roguish pilot lounged in the command chair, his feet propped up on the console. He flashed a grin at Reyes. "Just like old times, eh, Cap?" Hawkins said. "Ready to stick it to the Empire again?" Reyes nodded, his face tight with certainty. He still wore the scars of his last battle against the Voxari, both physical and mental. But now he had a chance to strike back, to expose the truth behind the weapons ban that had disgraced him. As they neared the Voxari homeworld of Zathura, the ship shuddered under a barrage of plasma fire. Imperial patrol cruisers swarmed around them, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. Hawkins cursed and sprung into action, his hands flying over the controls. Reyes jumped into the co-pilot's seat, adrenaline surging through his veins as he targeted the lead cruiser. Together, he and Hawkins wove through the Imperial formation, ducking and weaving to evade the onslaught. Plasma blasts scalded the ship's shields, alarms blaring in the cockpit. Reyes gritted his teeth, his finger hovering over the trigger of the ship's lone plasma cannon. With a ferocious battle cry, he let loose a stream of superheated plasma that tore through the Imperial cruiser's engines, setting off a chain of explosions that ripped the ship apart. Hawkins whooped in triumph as they blasted free of the ambush, the remaining cruisers falling behind. Reyes sat back in his seat, his heart pounding. It felt good to be back in the fight, to feel the thrill of outmaneuvering the Empire once again. But their actions had not gone unnoticed. As they made their final approach to Zathura, Varys turned to Reyes with a grim expression. "They'll be waiting for us now," she said. "We'll have to tread carefully from here on out." Reyes nodded, his persistence hardening. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head-on. For the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of his own redemption, he would not fail. They landed in the seedy underbelly of a Zatharian city, the ship's ramp lowering with a hiss of hydraulics. Zara, their contact with the local anarchist cell, greeted them with a curt nod. Her eyes gleamed with fierce intelligence as she led them through the twisting alleyways to her hidden base. Inside, amidst the glow of hollow displays and the hum of computer banks, Reyes and his team pored over the data Zara had gathered. Bribes, blackmail, assassinations. The evidence of the Empire's manipulation was damning. But still, they needed more. They needed incontrovertible proof of the Voxari's treachery. As they planned their next move, Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. He caught Varys' eye across the room, saw his own suspicion mirrored in her gaze. They had a mole in their midst, someone feeding information to the Empire. But there was no time to focus on that now. They had to act fast before the Empire closed in. And so, under cover of darkness, they infiltrated the Imperial Research Facility housing the banned human weapons tech. What they found inside was worse than Reyes could have imagined. row upon row of prototype rifles, cannons, and armor, all reverse-engineered from human designs. The Empire had been preparing for war all along, building an arsenal to crush any resistance. Rhea's blood boiled with fury as he downloaded the schematics and test data. This was the proof they needed, the evidence that would expose the Voxari's lies and rally the galaxy against them. But as they made their escape, the facility erupted into chaos. Imperial troops swarmed in from all sides, led by the merciless General Zaxos himself. Reyes grabbed a prototype rifle from the nearest rack and opened fire, the weapon's raw power surging through him like an electric current. Plasma bolts ripped through armor and flesh alike, Voxari soldiers falling before Reyes's onslaught. Beside him, Varys and Hawkins fought with equal ferocity, the anarchists laying down covering fire as they battled their way to the exit. They burst from the facility in a hail of plasma, Imperial reinforcements hot on their heels. Reyes's heart seized as he saw several of the anarchists fall, cut down by Voxari guns. But there was no time to mourn, no time for anything but the desperate rush to escape. Somehow, through skill and sheer luck, they made it back to their hidden ship. But as they blasted away from Zatharia, Reyes knew their fight was a long way to go. The Empire knew their faces now. They would be hunted across the stars, forced to stay one step ahead of Voxari agents as they raced to expose the truth. But Reyes was ready for the challenge. The galaxy needed to know what he had seen, needed to rise up against the Voxari threat. Whatever it takes, no matter the danger, he would not rest until the truth was known. The fate of humanity, the future of the cosmos itself, rested on their shoulders now, and Reyes would not let them down. The stolen data burned in Reyes' pocket as their ship hurtled through hyperspace. He focused his mind, replaying the carnage at the Imperial Research Facility. Those weapons, human weapons twisted by Voxari hands, could devastate entire systems. The galaxy had to know. "We're approaching the rendezvous point," Hawkins called from the cockpit. "Better strap in, no telling what kind of welcome we'll get." They emerged from hyperspace above Carthax, a world of smoke-choked factories and gleaming metal spires. A fleet of battered freighters and repurposed gunships hung in orbit. Zara's anarchist network rallied to their cause. As they docked with the command ship, Reyes felt a spark of hope. These were beings from a dozen different worlds, united against Voxari tyranny. Maybe they had a chance after all. Zara greeted them on the bridge, her ears burning with fierce persistence. "The data's already spreading through the undernet," she said. "Riots breaking out on 3 core worlds. But we need to hit them harder." Reyes nodded. "That's why we're here. What's our next move?" A holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive industrial complex on Carthax's surface. "Main weapons production facility," Zara explained. "Take it out and we cripple their war machine." "It won't be easy," a new voice cut in. A tall Voxari male stepped forward, his scales a muted gray. "I designed half the security systems myself." Reyes tensed, hand drifting to his weapon, but Zara waved him off. "This is Dax Corvin, former Imperial weapons engineer. He's on our side now." Corvin's multifaceted eyes met Reyes. "I've seen what they're building down there. If we don't stop it, there won't be a galaxy left to save." Plans were made, roles assigned. Reyes would lead the main assault team, while Varys coordinated with local cells for a diversion. As they geared up, Reyes caught Varys's eye. The Voxari female nodded, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever happened, they'd see this through together. The assault began under cover of darkness. Reyes' team slipped through the factory's outer defenses, guided by Corvin's insider knowledge. Alarms blared in the distance as Varys's diversion drew guards away from their target. They fought their way through automated defense systems and Imperial troops, the prototype rifle from the research facility proving its lethal efficiency. Reyes winced at each Voxari that fell, but pushed the guilt aside. This was war, and the stakes were too high for hesitation. Finally, they reached the central control room. Corvin's claws flew over the consoles, uploading Zara's virus. "It's done," he hissed. "Their production lines will be scrapped within the hour." A slow clap echoed through the room. General Zaxos stepped from the shadows, flanked by elite guards. "Impressive, Reyes, But did you really think we wouldn't be watching our own facility? Plasma bolts filled the air as both sides opened fire. Reyes dove for cover, mind racing. They needed a distraction, a way out. A deafening explosion rocked the building. Through the viewport, Reyes saw Varys's diversion had become a full-scale assault. Rebel ships strafed the factory's defenses, while ground forces pushed towards their position. Zaxos snarled, ordering his guards to fall back. "This isn't over, human!" Reyes launched himself at the Voxari general, their close quarters struggle a blur of fists and plasma fire. Despite Zaxos's alien strength, Reyes's combat-honed reflexes gave him the edge. A well-placed strike sent the general crashing to the floor, his weapons skittering away. Reyes stood over his fallen enemy, rifle aimed at Zaxos's head. It would be so easy to end it here, to eliminate a dangerous foe, but that's what the Empire would do. Reyes was fighting for something better. He lowered his weapon. "You're right. This isn't over, but maybe it doesn't have to end the way you think." Leaving the stunned general behind, Reyes and his team fought their way to the extraction point. As their ship blasted free of Carthax's gravity well, the factory below erupted in a chain of explosions. Word of their victory spread like wildfire. Reyes watched the reports flood in. Uprisings on a dozen worlds, Imperial forces in disarray. For the first time since his exile, he allowed himself to feel true hope. But in the gilded halls of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zorgax's fury knew no bounds. "Find them," he raged at his advisors. "Crush this insurgency before it spreads further." Salvador, the Emperor's shadowy right hand, bowed low. "My lord, perhaps we can use this chaos to our advantage, to root out all who might oppose your rule." As Zorgax's cruel smile spread, Salvador's eyes gleamed with hidden purpose. The real game was only just beginning. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace above Kafrena, its volcanic surface a swirling tapestry of crimson and obsidian. Reyes stood on the bridge of the command ship, surveying the harsh planet that would become their new base of operations. "Quite the vacation spot you've picked, Cap," Hawkins quipped, piloting the ship towards a concealed landing zone. Reyes allowed himself a grim smile. "The Empire won't be eager to follow us here." As they descended through Kafrena's acidic atmosphere, the ship's sensors picked up the mining outposts scattered across the planet's surface. Most were abandoned, their workers having fled the increasingly unstable tectonic activity. It made for the perfect cover. Over the next few weeks, Reyes coordinated a flurry of strikes against Imperial targets. Rebel cells activated on a dozen worlds, overwhelming local garrisons and liberating key systems. Reports flooded in of Imperial forces in disarray, struggling to contain the spreading insurrection. But the Empire's response was swift and merciless. Reyes watched the holographic display with clenched fists as footage from Jakora Prime played out before him. Commander Ravath, a towering Voxari with scales like polished obsidian, strode through the streets of the capital. Behind him, the purge squads left only carnage in their wake. "These are the wages of rebellion," Ravath's voice boomed over the screams and weapons fire. "Let this be a lesson to all who would defy the Emperor's will." The broadcast cut out, leaving the rebel command center in stunned silence. Varys placed a hand on Reyes' shoulder, her touch steadying him. "We can't let this stand," Reyes said, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to hit them where it hurts. We need to take Zatharus." The plan came together quickly. Varys would infiltrate the royal palace, disable the planetary shields, and open the way for the rebel fleet. It was a suicide mission, but she volunteered without hesitation. As Varys's stealth ship slipped away from Kafrena, Reyes addressed the gathered rebel forces. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with a dozen alien species, united in their desire for freedom. "Today we strike at the heart of tyranny," Reyes said, his words echoing through the cavernous base. "Today we show the galaxy that the Empire can bleed." The rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Zatharus, a glittering jewel of a world. For a moment all was still, then the planetary shields flickered and died. "That's our cue," Hawkins grinned, opening fire with their retrofitted human weapons. Plasma lanced through Imperial defense platforms, reducing them to molten slag. On the planet's surface, chaos erupted as rebel ground forces materialized in the streets of the capital. Reyes led the charge, plasma rifle in hand. Beside him, Dax Corvin's claws danced over a portable terminal, hijacking Imperial security systems. Zara coordinated strike teams through her neural implants, guiding them to key strategic targets. They fought their way through the ornate boulevards of the capital, past toppled statues of Emperor Zorgax and smoldering Imperial tanks. Reyes' world narrowed to the next target, the next firefight, pushing ever closer to the palace at the city's heart. A familiar figure appeared through the smoke and debris, General Zaxos, resplendent in gleaming battle armor. The Voxari's eyes locked onto Reyes, filled with cold fury. "I should have killed you when I had the chance," Zaxos snarled, igniting an energy blade. Reyes raised his rifle. "Your empire ends today." Their duel raged across a plaza strewn with fallen soldiers. Zaxos' alien strength and speed were fearsome, but Reyes had survived countless battles against impossible odds. He weathered the Voxari's onslaught, searching for an opening. It came when Zaxos overextended, his blade cleaving through a marble column. Reyes struck, a precise burst of plasma fire, finding the weak points in the general's armor. Zaxos collapsed, his energy blade sputtering out. Reyes stood over his fallen foe, rifle trained on Zaxos' head. But instead of finishing him, Reyes pulled out a pair of energy cuffs. "You're more used to us alive," Reyes said, securing the general. "There will be a reckoning for your crimes, but it will be in a court of law, not on the battlefield." With Zaxos in custody, the rebel forces pressed on towards the palace. Its gleaming spires were visible now, so close Reyes could almost taste victory. But as they neared the gates, a bone-deep tremor shook the ground. A swirling vortex of impossible darkness erupted from beneath the palace, consuming everything in its path. Reyes watched in horror as buildings, vehicles, and even fleeing civilians were pulled into the Singularity's maw. "Salvador!" Zaxos spat, his eyes wide with fear. "The fools activated the Singularity bomb." Reyes stared at the growing vortex, his mind racing. They were so close to victory, but at what cost? If they pressed on, the entire capital, along with everyone in it, would be consumed. But pulling back now meant letting Zorgax escape, prolonging a war that had already claimed countless lives. The fate of Zathras, and perhaps the entire rebellion, hung in the balance. Reyes knew the next few moments would define not just the outcome of this battle, but the very soul of the resistance he'd built. He turned to his team, their faces illuminated by the eerie light of the Singularity. Whatever choice he made, Reyes knew it would change everything. Reyes' gaze swept over his team, their faces etched with drive and fear. The Singularity's pull intensified, tearing chunks from nearby buildings and drawing them into its maw. "We can't let this spread," Reyes said, his voice cutting through the cacophony of destruction. "Corvin, I need you to analyze that bomb. Find a way to shut it down." The Voxari engineer nodded, his claws already dancing across a portable terminal. "I'll need time," he hissed. "Hawkins," Reyes turned to his pilot, "take a team and secure the inner palace. Cut off Zorgax's escape routes." As Hawkins moved out, Reyes activated his comms. "Zara, coordinate citywide evacuation. Get as many civilians out as you can." Varys appeared at his side, her scales reflecting the eerie light of the vortex. "I've found something," she said, presenting a datapad. "The bomb's design, it's Salvador's work, a final play to preserve Imperial power." Reyes cursed under his breath. Of course, the shadowy advisor would have a contingency plan. Minutes stretched into agonizing hours as Corvin worked. The Singularity's event horizon crept ever closer, swallowing more of the city with each passing moment. Finally, the engineer's eyes lit up. "I've got it," Corvin exclaimed. "An electromagnetic pulse, precisely calibrated. But we'll need immense power. The palace reactor core is our only option." Reyes nodded grimly. "Then that's where we're going. Hawkins, Varys, you're with me." He turned to the captured Voxari general. "Zaxos, I'm giving you a chance to save your people. Are you in?" The general's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "For Zathras," he growled. "Not for you." They fought their way through the palace's winding corridors, cutting down waves of Imperial guards. The building shook, rocked by the Singularity's relentless pull. As they neared the reactor core, a figure stepped from the shadows. Salvador stood before them, wielding a sleek weapon of unmistakably human design. "I knew you'd come," the advisor sneered. "Your human predictability will be your undoing." Plasma erupted from Salvador's weapon, forcing the team to scatter. Reyes returned fire, his shots absorbed by the advisor's personal shield. They exchanged volleys, neither side gaining the upper hand. In a blur of motion, Zaxos charged forward. The general's claws raked across Salvador's shield, overloading it. Before the advisor could recover, Zaxos emptied his weapon into Salvador's chest. The advisor crumpled, his experimental weapon clattering to the floor. But Zaxos stumbled, plasma burns searing his scales. "Go," the general gasped, collapsing against a console. "End this madness." Reyes hesitated for a heartbeat, then sprinted for the reactor controls. His fingers flew across the alien interface, guided by Corvin's instructions crackling through his earpiece. Warning klaxons blared as he overrode safety protocols, channeling the reactor's full output into a single devastating pulse. A wave of electromagnetic energy surged outward. The Singularity bomb's event horizon flickered, then collapsed in on itself. Silence fell over the war-torn capital. In the reactor's fading glow, Reyes turned to find Emperor Zorgax surrounded by rebel troops. The Voxari ruler's ornate robes were tattered, his imperious bearing shattered. "You've doomed us all?" Zorgax spat. "The Empire was order. Without it, the galaxy will descend into chaos." Reyes met the Emperor's gaze, seeing not a tyrant, but a being consumed by fear. He thought of the countless lives lost, the worlds ravaged by Imperial aggression, and he knew that the cycle had to end. "No," Reyes said, his voice firm. "We have a chance to build something better, not through conquest, but cooperation." He activated a comm channel, broadcasting across Imperial frequencies. "To all Imperial forces, the Singularity bomb has been neutralized. Emperor Zorgax is in custody. I call on you now to lay down your arms. Let us forge a new path, one that unites our strengths instead of exploiting our differences." As his words echoed across Zathras and beyond, Reyes looked to his team. The next steps would not be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt the weight of possibility. Hope and possibility. The immediate aftermath of the battle was a whirlwind of activity. Rebel forces secured key Imperial strongholds across Zathras, while Reyes coordinated with his lieutenants to establish a semblance of order in the war-torn capital. Days blurred into weeks as they worked tirelessly to stabilize the planet and beyond. Corvin, with his keen understanding of Voxari systems and culture, emerged as the natural choice to lead the transitional government. Reyes watched with a mix of pride and trepidation as the engineer was sworn in as interim leader. "I never thought I'd see the day," Corvin admitted, his scales shimmering with barely held back emotion. "A Voxari government built on cooperation rather than conquest." Reyes clasped his friend's shoulder. "It's a new era for all of us, but we're not out of the woods yet." Indeed, reports flooded in of unrest on dozens of Imperial worlds. Reyes authorized the deployment of mixed human Voxari peacekeeping forces to restore order and root out die-hard loyalists. It was a delicate balance, maintaining security without falling into the same authoritarian patterns they had fought against. 2 months after the fall of Zathras, Reyes stood before the newly reformed Galactic Council. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from a multitude of species took their seats. Many wore expressions of guarded hope, while others eyed their neighbors with barely concealed suspicion. Reyes took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He activated a holographic display, flooding the chamber with images and data streams. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice steady, "what you are about to see will shock you, but it is the truth that has been hidden for far too long." Over the next hour, Reyes laid bare the Empire's conspiracy. He presented intercepted communications, financial records, and testimony from defectors, all pointing to a coordinated effort to suppress human weapons technology and pave the way for Voxari domination. Gasps and angry murmurs rippled through the assembly. A Centauri representative, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation, rose to her feet. "How can we trust that this isn't human propaganda?" she demanded. Reyes nodded to a figure in the shadows. "That's why I've brought someone who can speak to the Empire's intentions firsthand." Zaxo stepped forward, his once proud bearing now subdued. The former general's testimony, delivered in clipped, factual tones, left no room for doubt. The council sat in stunned silence as the full scope of the deception became clear. As the shock began to subside, Reyes introduced Ambassador Torville. The seasoned human diplomat took center stage, his weathered features conveying gravitas and dedication. "We stand at a crossroads," Torville began, his rich voice filling the chamber. "We have seen the devastation wrought by unchecked power, but we have also witnessed the potential for change when diverse species unite against tyranny." Torville outlined his vision for a unified galactic peacekeeping force, with humans and their advanced weaponry serving as the tip of the spear. "Our technology, once feared, can now be the shield that protects us all," he argued. The chamber erupted into heated debate. A Voxari delegate, his scales filled, shouted, "You expect us to trust humans with such power after what we've seen?" "And how many died under Voxari rule?" a human representative fired back. Reyes watched the arguments unfold, his heart heavy. He knew the wounds of the past would not heal easily, but as the debate raged on, he saw glimmers of understanding begin to take root. After hours of impassioned speeches and tense negotiations, the vote was called. Reyes held his breath as the results were tallied. By the narrowest of margins, Torville's proposal passed. As the council adjourned, Reyes felt a tentative sense of accomplishment, but a nagging worry gnawed at him. He knew that not everyone would accept this new paradigm so easily. His fears were confirmed when Varys sought him out, her eyes dark with concern. "Reyes, we have a problem," she said, her voice low. "I've picked up chatter about Imperial holdouts gathering strength on the Outer Rim." Reyes' teeth clenched. "How bad?" Varys's expression was grim. "It's Ravath. He's amassed a significant force, and my sources say he's acquired some kind of superweapon." Reyes cursed under his breath. He had hoped the brutal commander had gone down with the rest of the Imperial leadership. "We need to move fast," he said, already formulating a plan. "Get Hawkins and Corvin. We're going hunting." Reyes' fist tight as he absorbed Varys' report. "Gather the team. We move now." Within hours, their stealth ship cut through the inky void of space, its destination locked on the desert world of Arrakis. Jace Hawkins piloted with precision, weaving through Ravath's orbital defenses like a ghost. As they touched down on the planet's scorched surface, Reyes surveyed the barren landscape. Waves of heat distorted the horizon, punctuated by the jutting silhouette of Ravath's fortress-like base. "Corvin, what's our best approach?" Reyes asked, his eyes never leaving the distant structure. The Voxari engineer's claws danced across a holo display. "There's a weak spot in their sensor grid. If we time it right, we can slip through undetected." Hawkins grinned, hefting his pulse rifle. "Then let's not keep Ravath waiting." The team moved swiftly across the dunes, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the shifting sands. As they neared the base perimeter, the sound of klaxons split the air. "Damn it," Varys hissed. "They've launched something." Reyes' blood ran cold as he watched a cluster of missiles streak into the sky. "We're too late," he breathed. But there was no time for regret. Hawkins was already in motion, leading the charge toward the base entrance. "We can still stop this," he shouted over his shoulder. The air filled with plasma fire as Ravath's mercenaries poured from the base. Reyes and his team fought tooth and nail, their advanced weaponry carving a path through the enemy ranks. Inside the base, alarms blared and emergency lighting bathed the corridors in an eerie red glow. They battled their way deeper, leaving a trail of fallen foes in their wake. "The control center should be just ahead," Corvin called out, consulting his holomap. As they rounded the final corner, a hail of enemy fire forced them back. Reyes glimpsed Ravath himself, the rogue commander's face twisted with hate. "You're too late, Reyes," Ravath bellowed. My virus will cleanse the galaxy of your human filth. Reyes gritted his teeth, formulating a plan. Corvin, I need a diversion. Hawkins, cover me. But before they could move, Corvin's eyes widened in alarm. Reyes, look out. The engineer shoved Reyes aside as a plasma bolt seared through the air. Corvin cried out in pain, collapsing to the floor with a smoking wound in his chest. Time seemed to slow as Reyes surveyed the chaos around him. Corvin lay motionless. Hawkins and Varys were pinned down, and beyond them, the control center held the key to stopping a galactic genocide. In that moment, Reyes made his choice. He spotted a cache of experimental human weaponry, no doubt salvaged by Ravath's forces. An idea, desperate and dangerous, formed in his mind. Hawkins, he shouted, I need you to get everyone out of here. I'm going to rig an EMP to take out those missiles. Hawkins's eyes widened in understanding. But sir, that'll fry every system for miles. How will you... That's an order, Lieutenant, Reyes cut him off. Get Corvin to medical care. I'll finish this. As his team reluctantly withdrew, Reyes set to work. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, cobbling together components into a crude but powerful electromagnetic pulse device. With the makeshift bomb complete, Reyes fought his way to the base's missile silo. Alarms blared as he hijacked one of Ravath's remaining rockets, reprogramming its flight path to intercept the virus-laden warheads. Not this time, you bastard, Reyes muttered as he loaded the EMP device and launched the missile. He watched the contrail arc across the sky, climbing higher and higher until it vanished from sight. Seconds later, a blinding flash illuminated the atmosphere. The EMP detonated, and for a moment, all was silent. Then chaos erupted anew. Every electronic system in the base went dark. Ravath's troops, their energy weapons rendered useless, scrambled in confusion. Reyes knew his window of opportunity was closing fast. He sprinted through the darkened corridors, setting demolition charges at key structural points. The base had to be destroyed, along with any trace of the deadly virus. As he placed the final charge, heavy footsteps echoed behind him. Ravath emerged from the shadows, a primitive projectile weapon clutched in his hands. You've ruined everything, the commander snarled. Reyes raised his own weapon, a testament to human ingenuity that had survived the EMP. It's over, Ravath. Surrender, and you might live to see trial. Ravath's answer came in the form of gunfire. Reyes dove for cover as bullets ricocheted off the metal walls. He returned fire, the familiar kick of the rifle against his shoulder, a grim comfort. Outside the base, Hawkins and Varys watched helplessly as the firefight raged within. The charges Reyes had set began to detonate, sending tremors through the ground. We have to go back for him, Varys insisted, her scales shimmering with agitation. Hawkins shook his head, his expression pained. We have our orders. Reyes knew what he was doing. As their ship lifted off, a final massive explosion tore through the base. The shockwave buffeted their craft, nearly sending them spiraling out of control. When the dust settled, only a smoking crater remained where Ravath's stronghold had stood. Of Reyes, there was no sign. Varys stared at the devastation below, her voice barely a whisper. Do you think he made it out? Hawkins's grip tightened on the controls. I don't know, but if anyone could survive that, it's Reyes. As they set course for Galactic HQ, the fate of their commander remained a mystery, but the galaxy for now was safe from Ravath's bioweapon. The true cost of that victory, however, was yet to be determined. The memorial service for Commander Reyes cast a somber pall over the Galactic Council chambers. Varys stood rigid, her scales a muted gray, as she stared at the empty casket draped in the new United Galaxy's flag. Beside her, Jace Hawkins hardened his face, his eyes fixed on the middle distance. Dax Corvin leaned heavily on a cane, his chest still bandaged from the plasma wound he'd taken in their final mission. A Centauri delegate was midway through a flowery eulogy when a piercing whine cut through the air. Heads turned skyward as a battered ship, trailing smoke and debris, careened towards the memorial pavilion. Incoming! Hawkins shouted, tackling Varys to the ground as the vessel slammed into the courtyard. Metal shrieked and stone cracked, a plume of dust obscuring the crash site. As the debris settled, a figure stumbled from the wreckage. Attendees gasped, some backing away in fear, but Varys's keen eyes widened in recognition. "It can't be," she breathed. The figure stumbled forward, revealing a face they'd thought lost forever. Commander Reyes, bruised and battered, but unmistakably alive. "Sorry I'm late," he croaked, a wry smile playing at his lips before he collapsed. Hours later, in the medbay, Reyes recounted his improbable survival. "Found an old vault just before the charges blew," he explained, wincing as a medical droid tended to his wounds. "Spent weeks scavenging, trying to cobble together a distress beacon. Finally got picked up by some Andorian traders." Corvin shook his head in disbelief. We were certain—" "It'll take more than Ravath to keep me down," Reyes said, his expression hardening. "Speaking of which, what's the situation?" Varys stepped forward, her scales rippling with concern. "We've made progress. The new council is holding, and the peacekeeping forces are maintaining stability in most systems. But what?" Reyes pressed. Hawkins's voice was grim. "Intel suggests Ravath survived too. He's gathering Imperial loyalists on the fringes. Could be the start of an insurgency." Reyes absorbed this, his mind already formulating strategies. Before he could respond, the medbay doors slid open. Ambassador Torville entered, flanked by a cadre of delegates. "Commander," Torville said, his voice thick with emotion, "it's good to have you back. We have a proposition for you." Within days, Reyes found himself standing before the full Galactic Council. The chamber buzzed with a mix of hope and trepidation as Torville outlined the formation of the United Galaxy's Defense Force. "Commander Reyes," Torville concluded, "we would be honored if you would lead this new initiative. Your first priority, neutralize Ravath and his Imperial holdouts before they can destabilize what we've built." Reyes met the ambassador's gaze, then swept his eyes across the assembled delegates. He saw fear, hope, and everything in between, but mostly he saw a galaxy finally united in purpose. "I accept," Reyes said simply. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Reyes wasted no time assembling his core team. Hawkins and Varys were promoted to field lieutenants, while Corvin took charge of weapons development. Their command center hummed with activity as they pored over intelligence reports, trying to pinpoint Ravath's location. Encrypted comm chatter and supply chain analyses painted a picture of growing Imperial strength in the lawless frontier systems. "We need to move fast," Reyes said, studying a star map dotted with potential hideouts. "Every day gives Ravath more time to consolidate power." As if on cue, Varys burst into the room, her scales flushed with agitation. "Commander, we have a problem, a big one." She quickly outlined her clandestine meeting with Zara, the rebel hacker. The news of a human ultra-nationalist faction aiding Ravath sent a chill through the room. "Saboteurs," Hawkins growled, "in our own ranks." Rhea's mind raced, weighing their options. They needed to root out the traitors, but they couldn't delay their pursuit of Ravath. Time was running out on both fronts. "Varys, I want you to work with Zara, quietly. Find these ultra-nationalists and shut them down," Reyes ordered. "Hawkins, you're with me. We're taking the fight to Ravath." As they prepared to embark on their mission, Reyes couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. They were about to plunge into the depths of hostile space, chasing a madman with a superweapon. And now they couldn't even be certain of their own people's loyalty. The newly christened UGS Peacekeeper, pride of the Defense Force fleet, slipped its moorings and set course for the galactic frontier. As the stars elongated into streaks of light outside the viewports, Reyes steeled himself for the battles to come, both against Ravath's forces and potentially against traitors in their midst. The UGS Peacekeeper glided silently through the inky void, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. Commander Reyes stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the tactical display as they approached the outer rim. "Intercepted transmission decoded, sir," Varys reported, her scales shimmering with anticipation. "Ravath's signal origin confirmed in the Zeta 9 asteroid field." Reyes nodded grimly. "Hawkins, plot a course. We're going in quiet." As they neared the asteroid field, The vastness of space gave way to a treacherous maze of tumbling rocks and jagged debris. Hawkins' hands danced over the controls, guiding their frigate through gaps barely wider than the ship itself. "Radiation spike detected," Corvin called out, his eyes glued to the sensor readouts. Faint, but consistent with a shielded facility. Reyes leaned forward, studying the holographic representation of the field's core. "There," he pointed to a cluster of larger asteroids. "That's where he's hiding." As they penetrated deeper into the asteroid field, automated defense turrets suddenly sprang to life, filling the void with searing plasma bolts. "Evasive maneuvers!" Reyes barked. The ship lurched as Hawkins sent it into a wild spiral, narrowly avoiding the barrage. Varys's fingers flew across her console, streams of code reflecting in her eyes. "Working on disabling their targeting systems," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Just need a moment." The ship shuddered as a glancing blow struck their shields. Then as suddenly as it began, the assault ceased. "We're in," Varys announced, a note of pride in her voice. As they approached the core asteroid, its rocky surface shimmered and faded, revealing a massive hangar bay carved into its heart. The peacekeepers slipped inside, touching down on the gleaming metal deck. Reyes led his team through the cavernous facility, their footsteps echoing ominously. They passed row upon row of disassembled human weaponry, each piece meticulously labeled and categorized. "He's reverse engineering our tech," Corvin whispered, his face pale. They rounded a corner and froze. Before them stood a colossal cannon, its barrel easily the length of their ship. The air crackled with scarcely controlled energy. "That's no ordinary plasma weapon," Hawkins breathed. "That thing could vaporize a planet." Reyes activated his wrist communicator. "Command, this is Reyes. We've located Rabath's base and confirmed development of—" A burst of static cut him off. Varys's eyes widened in alarm. "Our comms are being jammed. Someone knew we were coming." The distant sound of booted feet and barked orders reached their ears. Reyes's mind raced. "We've been set up. Fall back to the ship now." They sprinted through twisting corridors, plasma bolts searing the air around them. As they neared the hangar, a familiar figure stepped out to block their path. "Ambassador Torville?" Reyes gasped, his weapon wavering. Torville's face twisted into a sneer as he raised his own rifle. "I'm afraid your services are no longer required, Commander." In that moment of shock, Rabath's troops caught up, surrounding them in a hail of weapons fire. As Reyes dove for cover, one thought burned in his mind. They'd been betrayed by one of their own, and the real battle for humanity's soul was only just beginning. Plasma fire erupted around them as Reyes and his team scrambled for cover. Torville's betrayal had caught them off guard, but years of combat experience kicked in. Hawkins laid down suppressing fire while Varys worked feverishly to bypass the communication jamming. "We need an exit strategy now!" Reyes shouted over the din of battle. Corvin's eyes darted around the hangar, analyzing potential escape routes. "The auxiliary fuel lines," he said, pointing to a cluster of pipes running along the ceiling. "If we can rupture them—" Reyes nodded, understanding immediately. "Do it." A well-placed shot from Corvin's rifle punctured the pipes, sending a cascade of volatile fuel raining down. The distraction gave them the opening they needed. They sprinted for the peacekeeper, dodging plasma bolts and leaping over debris. As they reached the ship's ramp, Reyes turned back. Through the chaos, he locked eyes with Torville. The ambassador's face was a mask of contempt and frustration. "This isn't over, Reyes," Torville bellowed. The peacekeeper's engines roared to life as Hawkins punched it, rocketing them out of the hangar. Behind them, the ruptured fuel lines ignited, engulfing Rabath's base in a massive fireball. The journey back to the United Galaxy's capital was tense and silent. Each member of the team grappled with the implications of Torville's betrayal and the devastating power they'd witnessed in Rabath's weapon. Upon their return, Reyes found himself standing before the Galactic Council, recounting the harrowing events. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders as he explained how human ingenuity, twisted to destructive ends, had nearly plunged the galaxy back into tyranny. "We can't simply ban this technology," Reyes argued, pacing before the assembled delegates. Doing so would only drive development underground, creating an arms race we can't control. Murmurs of disagreement rippled through the chamber. A Centauri representative stood, his luminous tendrils pulsing with agitation. "Then what do you propose, Commander? We cannot allow such power to remain unchecked." Reyes took a deep breath, steeling himself for the controversy his next words would unleash. "Regulated deterrence," he said firmly. "We decommission all existing human superweapons, but preserve their theoretical foundations. The knowledge itself becomes our shield against future aggression." The council erupted into heated debate. Some saw wisdom in Reyes's plan, while others recoiled at the thought of enshrining human destructive potential as galactic policy. Days later, Reyes stood on a windswept plain, overseeing the dismantling of the last human doomsday device. Varys, Hawkins, and Corvin flanked him, their faces solemn as robotic arms meticulously disassembled the weapon. "Is this really the right call?" Hawkins asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Reyes watched as the gleaming components were rendered inert, one by one. "It has to be," he replied. "The alternative is unthinkable." The final act took place on a barren, nameless world. Reyes and Corvin descended into a vault carved deep beneath the planet's surface. There they committed the database of human military technology to eternal stasis. As the last encryption protocols engaged, sealing away humanity's most destructive secrets, Reyes met Corvin's gaze. No words were needed. They both understood the gravity of what they'd done. Emerging from the vault, they rejoined Varys and Hawkins. The team stood silently, watching as automated systems buried the entrance under tons of rock and earth. "What now?" Varys asked, her scales shimmering with uncertainty. Reyes looked to the horizon, where the planet's twin suns were setting in a blaze of color. "Now," he said, "we build a future where this knowledge never needs to see the light of day again." As they boarded their ship, Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that they'd merely postponed an inevitable reckoning. The galaxy's peace now rested on a knife's edge, with humanity holding the blade.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.